I want to thank you very much for joining us today and to wish everybody all the best during these difficult times. And as we know, there are many other opportunities to virtually connect these days, and especially with the situation with Zoom or Skype, there's a lot of ways that people can virtually connect or even host events. And as someone like myself who hosts regular networking events, in my case for entrepreneurs and community business leaders, I've been looking for a platform and a way to do this that, one, doesn't break the bank, two, anybody can use it, and three, it's a great platform. It has everything I'm looking for to host what I call, or mimic rather, natural networking events. Right now, we're currently in presentation mode. Like, think of it as you're on stage. I could invite XYZ person up to share a screen with you, to talk about, right now, it was already brought up, this is not a virtual background. I actually have two 8-foot banners standing next to me, but that was a great question that I will bring up with the developers to how to have a virtual background. I think that's very wise. Thank you very much, Dr. Hesse. Right now, again, everybody in presentation mode is currently on mute. Your camera is off and your mic is off. So right now, you're not able to go back into what I call the lobby and network with everybody. You're here listening to people present. And there is an option, thank you, Mark, for noticing on the right-hand side or the bottom, it says chat. There's several different options. You could chat a general chat where everybody on the call can see it and interact in real time. You could individually send personal messages to each other, or when you're back in the lobby section, when you go to chat, you have the option as well to send people at your table messages. Because this is a brand new platform, the purpose of these trial events are to help people realize some of the functionalities of it and answer any questions. Because I think once you realize some of what the capabilities are, you're going to be as hooked as I am. I'm only exclusively using this platform, totally sold, and it's going to change how people network. I'm really excited because, as I was mentioning earlier, it's great for my needs when I'm hosting events from 5 to 50 or 100 people. Two, it's great for conferences. And I believe some of the original functionalities of the program was set up so that you could interact with up to 800 people, let's say a wedding show, or you having a tech conference and you have sponsors. When we go back into the lobby mode, you'll notice that each table can be individually renamed. And the top left and bottom left, and the top right and bottom right tables, they're little larger tables. You can have logos of your sponsors, and you could direct people with a little call to action button and a link to, let's say, their website or their YouTube video or anywhere you want to direct people. Right now, I believe I had it set up for the Ottawa Board of Trade logo, and I think Startup Canada, because we had the executive director of Startup Canada, Kayla Isabel, on our call last night, who was interacting on this platform. So let's see, there's a couple questions here. Right now, you're talking about, Mark, you're talking about virtual summits. All you see is a talking head. Well, right now we're in presentation mode, so yeah, you see my little talking head. But for instance, I could invite Nancy Morris, who's also very efficient at this platform, up on stage with me. And let me try to do that. So Nancy, stand by. I'm sending you an invite right now. You'll probably get in about 3, 2, 1. There.
You know that countdown by now, don't you, Jarrod?
I love it. So everybody, this is Nancy Morris, a business psychologist, and she's also very active in using some of the functionalities of this system. Thanks for joining us, Nancy.
Thanks, Jarrod. I love this platform. I really see, as I sort of said in the chat, so many different applications for it. Networking at the tables, pre-training event, post-training event, networking at the tables, and then, also being able to use the table functionality to have themed tables answering questions from the stage, giving each table a question to answer, and then people from that table coming up like you are right now, bringing people up to the front and talking about what the table talked about. Really good for brainstorming and thought storming events. All sorts of stuff this can be used for sure.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons why I'm hosting so many of these training sessions, as is Nancy, is to let people realize some of the value, the functionality of it. And I don't know about you, Nancy, but every time I'm on it, I'm thinking of something new that it could be used for. We had another question from Mark. What about, can this be used in conjunction with an in-person event? Absolutely. We could have somebody I believe, with a camera panning around and interacting in real time for those who are doing it virtually. And that's something I will be considering once we go back into hosting real events. Again, I like to make this interactive. Because everybody's camera is currently on mute and your mic, because we're in presentation mode, if you have questions, please write it down in the general chat to your right and we'll see it in real time. One of the things I like about this functionality is that there's very little downtime, it seems, depending on your computer system. If you have any technical issues, refresh your screen, like once we're back in the lobby area, and you'll realize that the default goes to mic off, camera off. You have to toggle that back on at the bottom of your screen. So Nancy, you're welcome to say a few words about some more of the functionality, or I'm going to continue going into some of my discussion points. Okay, so I'll take you off of the presentation mode, Nancy. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand in the and I'll invite you back in. Oh. And if anybody else has any questions you want to get on the call, there's an option to raise your hand. I'll see it and I can invite you up. But remember, I am recording this on YouTube, so if you don't want your picture and likeness used, then you might not want to be on presentation mode. Okay, thank you, Nancy. Okay, one of the things about this platform is I like to say it was originally used or created for conferences, large-scale conferences. Right now, I don't plan on hosting an 800-person conference, probably more the 10 to 50 range, which is fine. At the top right of your screen right now, you'll see a little icon. You could left-click it and you could update your name. You could update a profile picture. You could connect with your LinkedIn profile, which is a really cool feature. Because when you're networking with somebody, you think of it as a virtual business card. When we're back in the lobby mode, you'll see that there's tiny little icons of everybody in various rooms. Up to 6 people per room, at least on the platform that I'm using. There's different levels, like tiers. But in this case, there's up to 6 people per room. You could hover over somebody, left-click it, and their little virtual business card will show up. If you left-click their Connect on LinkedIn, it automatically opens up a new window, and it's so easy to connect with them on LinkedIn. It's a really cool feature. There's also another option in your updating profile section to include a meeting booking URL. It doesn't have to be Calendly or an Outlook invite. It could be anywhere you want to direct people. For instance, I think mine goes to my eSAX website, or I could have it go to my Sax site, or a URL of a YouTube video, anywhere you want to direct people. Again, it's that virtual business card. Anybody have any questions about updating a profile? Okay, we're good. Thank you very much, Joy, for the note. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Some systems and programs might not work as well because this whole platform is still in beta mode. And my understanding is that the developers were working on this for over a year, but because of the situation we're all in, they were almost, encouraged, forced to get an uptick on their on their market. I believe there, Dr. Haseeb, there is an option to have an HD camera. This is not an HD camera, I believe. It's an old one that I found lying around. So my face might look a little bit blurry because it's zoomed in. But when we go back to the main lobby area, you don't have to zoom in on my face unless I'm sharing a screen or something. Oh, thank you, Nancy. You sent a note about the Q&A. I can see that. I'm not sure if everybody else can. That's in the chat feature. To me, I mean, you could use the Q&A in addition to the general chat feature, but perhaps that may be more applicable if you have questions about the functionality of the system. One of the issues is when we go back to the main lobby area, once I remove the presentation section, I get asked this a lot. How do you bounce around and talk to other people? Very simple. The system will automatically place you in a room or table, and you'll see there's usually a few other people there. If there's nobody in your room, you could just easily bounce to another room by double-clicking an empty sofa chair in the room you want to go to, and just double-click it. When you do that, you will automatically be booted out of your current room and brought right over to your other room. So for instance, there's 3 or 4 people, let's say in room table number 3. and you're hanging out in table number 1, there's nobody there. Well, think about it, a networking event. You're at a cocktail reception and you're standing around with your drink, you're looking around, nobody's there, but you see a room with a table, 2 other people, you walk over to them. This is the same way. You just double click it and you'll instantly join that table. But you have to remember, the default is camera off and mic off. In order to see people's picture at the top of your screen, their camera has to be on. So we don't want any lurkers around at a networking event. So please, it's a good best practice to put your camera and mic on so we can hear you. Mark, I see that I believe Safari was one of the issues in the functionality of the system. If you can, try Chrome. And it took me actually a couple of times to get my LinkedIn profile working. That might be a bit of a glitch. Refresh your screen and see if that were to work. I know it actually worked for me. Another question, Joy, is there a limit for attendees who can join the virtual event? Yes, depending on the platform you sign up for. The basic platform is up to 50 people per event. The one I have is up to 200 people per event. And then there goes to more of an enterprise package. Let's say you're hosting a wedding show or a conference, you can have up to 800 people per event. I think most of our needs is probably going to be less than about 200, but I'd be happy to talk to you more about this. And let's see, any other questions? Can the host delete the Q&A? I'm trying now. I can mark it as answered. Yes, and your question disappears. Thank you, Jean-Paul. Okay, any other questions for now? I think that's pretty easy. Like I mentioned earlier, on the left-hand side of the lobby and the right-hand side, you'll see logos. They act as a regular room. But if you have a sponsor, let's say I had somebody from the Ottawa Board of Trade who was on the call with us, then that person could be in that room, stationary, and then people will come in and bounce around and ask questions about them because I have their logo. It's very easy to see. And again, I added a URL to their website, or I believe there's also a video that you could go double click some of these sponsors. Each table, like I mentioned, can be individually named. If you're doing, let's say, a silent auction, each table can have a different item. If you have different stakeholders, each table can be renamed as their business page. Very easy. When we go back to the main lobby, at the top of the screen, above the little tables, normally where you would see the your pictures from everybody in that room, you'll notice that there looks like a semicircle, an orange semicircle. I believe it's supposed to represent a stage. On the right of that stage, there's a little square with text, completely customizable, and I provided some best practices on how to use some of the functionality. To the left of the stage is a little YouTube video on how to use the program, which was done by the actual developers. Again, you could add any URL you want, but I think until people realize how to use the system, it's going to take a little bit of a learning process. And that's why every 2 days, I'm hosting a little networking trial to see how the functionality works. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please keep them for me. We're going to go back to the lobby shortly after it looks like a few more questions here. And then people are going to keep networking. And then maybe in about 10-15 minutes, I'm going to jump back onto the presentation mode to see if anybody has any questions, to talk about their thoughts, their feelings, how they think the functionality went. But I think you'll agree that for those of you who host events, this is a really unique platform to be able to interact with everybody, at least in the presentation mode for sure. But also at a networking event, you're only talking to people around your table. I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but let's say you're in table number 5 and there's 4 other people in your room, in that table. So there's 5 people in total. You're only interacting with those 5 people at table 5. You could see their picture, you could hear and interact in real time. You're not talking to anybody else at other tables. And this is the coolest part of the feature, because when you're networking, again, you're only interacting with a few people at a time. This is the way to do that. Each room acts as a separate standalone connection with those people. Let's bounce around and see some of the other questions. Thank you, Mark. You see some potential for holding online conferences. A training video is very useful, and that's why I'm recording this right now. Right now we're up to about 14 or 15 minutes. It will go on YouTube Live, and I'll start using that as a platform to help people realize the functionality of this. And it's going to take a bit more training as well, but most of us, it's only going to take 5 or 10 minutes of bouncing around and realizing some of the value of this. Nancy, I'm also going to be making a little promo videos myself to how to use the function more effectively. Yes, there. Mark had another question. There's different levels of access for a conference. Who can pay for what? You probably realized when you signed up for this, it directed you to events.com. It has nothing to do with this platform, but it's a way that I could keep track and see who registers. And once you register, it in the confirmation email, it gives you the actual link to join this call, because I will be monetizing these events because I host networking events. It's my day job. It's what I do. And that's a way to collect ticket money or sales or selling, eSAX or whatever you want to sell through that external platform. And then once they register, then they're given the access to join this. Absolutely. If you have multiple sponsors, Mark, each one, you could have the name of their sponsor at the table, and then they could sit there and people can come bounce around between tables and come and go like a real networking event. It is really, really cool, the functionality. At that point, any other questions, last minute questions? We're going to go back to the lobby mode. I encourage you to play around with some of the functionality, bounce around tables, click on some of the sponsor links, see how you might be able to use this platform. And I think more people, once they realize it, it's going to be incredibly valuable. A few days ago, for instance, I was on the eSAX Pickering Chamber of Commerce, they're around Toronto, who were using this platform for the first time, and I was going around helping people use some of the functionality. So chambers of commerce, BIAs, it's incredible what this platform could do for those organizations who host networking events. Great. I'd be happy. So when we come back into the lobby mode, I can still see your questions in the general chat. Actually, everybody can. So please feel free to write them down if you're having an issue or you want to learn about XYZ, and I'll either address it there, or when we come back into presentation mode, we'll take it from there. So stand by, everybody. We're going to go back into the presentation mode. And if you haven't done so already, please update your profile at the top right of the screen. And if you have any technical issues, your camera's not working, your mic is fuzzy, refresh the page. But remember that it goes back to default, that your camera is off and your mic is off. You have to do that back at the bottom of the screen. So stand by, everybody. Happy networking. Thank you.